TAL Education Group. Stock is up over 100% in the past year. It's up almost 20x in the past 5 years. Trades at 130 times trailing earnings as though it invented and patented education. What could go wrong? Turns out, a lot. 8 years ago, I was the first to expose a US-listed Chinese fraud, as shown in the recent documentary, The China Hustle. Since then, my firm has exposed about $20 billion in overseas-listed Chinese frauds, including the poster child for Chinese frauds, Sinoforest. The fraud that we're talking about now is actually about 5 times as large market cap as Sinoforest was.
I thought that this whole fraudulent Chinese companies listed on U.S. exchanges situation had gone away and that circus had packed up and left town.
The truth is the situation's worse than ever. It's like the old adage, if you show me the incentive, I'll show you the outcome. Well, when all of this money was stolen from U.S. investors and nobody goes to prison and the auditors just get slapped on the wrist, it sends the message that if you are in China, you have zero to lose by stealing U.S. investors' money. Short sellers right now are effectively the only line of defense against these frauds from China coming to the U.S. capital markets. But it takes a lot of time and resources to ferret these out. We and our investigators have spent close to 1,000 man-hours researching TAL over months. This is thousands of pages, done field work at numerous locations, and spoken with former employees and other sources who provided a detailed look at the business that nobody else has had to date. TAL Education is a for-profit education company, does small, class-sized tutoring, after-school learning. The issue with TAL is that its core business margins are in decline, and I see them as trying to cover it up. So let's focus for now on 2 M&A transactions, or 2 sets of transactions. The kindest view of these transactions is that they were in bad faith. I personally believe that these were fraudulent.
It was started by a guy named John Gu, who was like a 19-year-old whiz kid. He had an idea for a business, and he got a little bit of venture money, and then TAL shows up.
TAL had a VIE called Dongfang Renli, DFRL, which did overseas education consulting. The first thing that TAL did, which goes right to the heart of my oft-expressed concerns about VIEs, is TAL terminated the VIE agreement that it had with DFRL. And it did that so that it could then dispose or transfer out DFRL to Shunshun. And then TAL reacquired Shunshun, or it acquired Shunshun but reacquired DFRL, which, as far as we can tell, was substantially all of Shunshun's business. When it acquired all of Shunshun, it bought back the same business it got rid of. TAL lied about this from the outset. TAL said that it actually made its first investment in Shunshun in December after it disposed of Dongfang Renli. However, TAL actually invested in Shunshun before it transferred Dongfang Renli to Shunshun, which means that was an undisclosed related party transaction. Likely the reason that TAL lied about the timeline is because it would have had to have made more disclosure had it been clear that it was a transfer to a related party. One of the things that I think is most telling and most ridiculous about this is when you look at the fair value that TAL ultimately ascribes to Shunshun. So TAL basically gives them the business and invests a tiny amount of money, and then later is putting in this money, supposedly, and valuing it at over $100 million. To me, that sounds like complete bullshit. The real bump in valuation came from a transaction when TAL purchased shares from what looked to be a straw counterparty, somebody who was inserted just to flip those shares to TAL from the other shareholders. There's an entity that's created right before TAL buys equity from the other shareholders, and that entity then acquires equity from existing shareholders and flips it right to TAL, and soon thereafter the entity is deregistered. I mean, that looks like a classic case of a straw buyer.
And here you can see the executive director is Wang Beishi, who is Zhang Yang's wife.
So that entity was owned by the wife of the CEO of Shunshun.
You can see the date of establishment of the company, May 26, 2016, the deregistration date, which occurred in 2016, October 10th.
Yeah, and that was established just, 2 weeks before Minqing got the shares in Shunshun.
Approximately.
There were actually 2 sets of SAIC filings for Shunshun.
In total, there were 8 changes to the 2016 annual report. So when we went to go try to figure out what these changes are, we referred back to the credit report, which is over here. To change the total liabilities, what changes here significantly.
And so that those prepayments are about 200 million RMB, up from 11.2 million RMB.
In 2015.
Yes, in 2015.
So the prepayments are substantially all of the total liabilities.
So when Shunshun first files its SAIC financials, we see them booking deferred revenue of $11.2 million. Then at a later date, we see them booking deferred revenue of $30 million.
We've seen these guys do this stuff all the way back to 2011, like Doyen Global Water, Orient Paper, you name it, they've done it.
So what we also saw was at first they file an asset balance of 15.1 million RMB.
That's total assets.
That's correct. Then we catch them filing a cash balance of 15.3 million RMB.
Okay, so they filed 15.3 million on the amended financials, just cash, versus 15.1 total assets on the original financials.
Correct. So how can you have a cash balance larger than your asset balance?
I mean, that's a real red flag. I mean, that's triple red flag. That appears to us to be stone cold fraud, caught red-handed there in the SAIC financials. This concept of getting rid of a company and then buying it back to generate accounting profits is very similar to what Enron did with its Nigeria barges, and which was actually deemed to be fraudulent. And this is not the only time that TAL has done that. We see TAL do this again with a company called Guangzhou One-on-One. In fiscal 2016, TAL claimed to have sold a business called Guangzhou One-on-One, which was one-on-one tutoring, to another company called Qingjing, or Qingqing in Chinese. And then, a year later, TAL claims to have reacquired the same business from Qingqing. TAL claimed that they sold this business, but then, reacquired it a year later because it didn't work out well for Qingqing. And, it's kind of funny because I've lived in China, I've done business there. I don't think you can even return like a tube of toothpaste you're not happy with, let alone a $50 million business. We learned through multiple conversations that Qingqing set up this entity called Shujia, which was purportedly supposed to own the one-on-one business that acquired from TAL. What other evidence do we have that TAL continued to control the business? And is it also involving Shujia?
Yeah, so we looked at the 20th. We saw TAL was claiming one of its VIEs accrued about a $12.5 million income tax payable on the sale. But we actually didn't see any gain or tax expense and accrual in the Guangzhou or the other VIE.
Okay, so the onshore financial statements are not reflecting the gain, the purported tax, etc., right?
That's correct. After that, we sent the investigators to speak with the people of the still one-on-one open stores, and the former employees that we spoke to who'd been there at the time had either never heard of Changing, or a few of them said there was a corporation of some sort, but not an acquisition.
不是，现在都是学士的。我们现在那个财务收据上全部都是学士的。这一刻我就是高层的事情，我就不清楚了。这一个号不清楚，因为现在我们全部都是跟学士一个主体和未来集团下面的。
Even if these transactions were legit, it seems that the deferred revenue doesn't tie up with the SAICs anyway.
The deferred revenue reported in November at the acquisition was higher than what you see at the end of the calendar year in December.
How do you recognize 1/3 of your deferred revenue in the last month of the calendar year? I don't think you do. I don't think TAL ever actually disposed of one-on-one, therefore never could have reacquired it. I think that this was just a pretense to try to get about $50 million in valuation gains and also this deferred revenue. We were clued into this disposal never actually having happened by looking at the Wayback Machine. This is Guangzhou Jiaojiaban, which is the Guangzhou one-on-one website. But this is July 2015, just before it claims to have transferred out one-on-one to changing. Here is May of 2016, which would have been well into changing owning one-on-one. It's basically the same text. This is not reflecting any sort of transaction with Qingqing.
What pops up is all about Tao. Nothing about Qingqing, nothing about Shuja, and even they have the IPO picture for Tao.
Tao took a valuation gain on this that constituted almost half of its net income for that fiscal year. And then after, quote, reacquiring it, that deferred revenue, we think, came in at 100% gross margin. And that also really helped the operating margin in subsequent years. But the worst part about that is, don't think that that deferred revenue is actually real. Think that that is fraudulent. So when you weave these complex and ever-expanding webs of lies, you can't get it 100% right. You will always leave breadcrumbs that can be found. We firmly believe Tao is a fraud. It's probably the 400th or so fraud from China listed in the US in the past decade. Unlike the typical China hustle scam, though, there is a real business there. But that said, Tao overstates its profits significantly. Tao has combined the China hustle and the Enron playbooks, and now finds itself with a market cap much larger than the stories covered in the China hustle documentary. It's actually one of the largest US traded frauds of the past decade. Tao does what it does because no Chinese company chairman has done jail time, no auditor has been meaningfully punished. In fact, Tao's auditor, Deloitte China, has had more fraud blowups than any other auditor in China, including firms you've never heard of. There's an old saying in business that goes, their money's as green as anybody else's. That's obviously been the mentality underlying buying shares of companies like Tao. But when we buy stocks of companies with falsified profits, this isn't creating value. This isn't mutually beneficial. This is playing a zero-sum game. And as investors in the US who do this, who play this game, like to point out, the Chinese aren't exactly stupid. So when we tolerate these frauds from China listing in the US, we really need to ask ourselves, who's the sucker at the table?
There's no doubt in my mind that Tao education will drop well below $40. Remember though, however, in the case of Enron, Enron didn't drop all of a sudden just in one day. So some of these situations take some time to develop. Now, the truth of the matter is, what I wanted to talk to you about is this. There's three main reasons why stocks fall. The video that you just watched gives you a great example how some companies are purely fraudulent. They overstate their earnings, they overstate their sales, and therefore, eventually, the stock price will fall. Now, the second reason why stock prices fall is there's always, every day in the market, that stocks drop for whatever the reasons, such as earnings, such as maybe the expectations of the investors are mismatched with what the company is actually reporting. Some potential news of maybe a takeover that doesn't go through. There's a ton of reasons why stocks fall daily. And at the end of this video, I'll actually give you a really good example of a stock that is not fraudulent, that actually has pretty good earnings, but regardless of that, it managed to fall by $100 in less than a couple of hours. So why am I talking to you about this? Well, because there's a lot of money to be made if you're a trader on identifying opportunities when stocks drop. Now, the third reason I wanted to share with you why stocks drop is when the entire market drops, it pretty much takes a lot of stocks down with it, even the best stocks. So you have three great opportunities to profit when stocks fall, but you have to know exactly what to look for. So I invite you to click the link below where I would like to take you on a journey and help you discover how I used 5 core fundamentals of shorting stocks through put options that help me turn 12,000 into 466,000 in less than 7 hours trading options from my laptop. In this video course, I will show you and help you discover the power of acceleration in trading options. And as any trader, the ultimate goal is to be free. So this is what you'll learn in this trading course. You'll discover the best stocks for trading options, the stocks that you will be able to short through put options. You'll discover the top 3 chart patterns for huge returns when stocks fall. You'll discover the key to locking the gains. When do you exactly lock the gains? You'll discover the difference between the trend and TRO. Trend will make you money. TRO will make you a fortune. You'll discover the secrets behind timing. You'll discover how to trade the news and time the market reaction to the news to increase your profits. So the question is, are you wanting to learn how to make money when stocks fall? Are you ready for your breakthrough? Take a look at this great example, which happened just recently. And the truth of the matter is, there are many examples like that happen, if not daily, but almost every other day. Whoa, stop. What is going on here? Well, what you're looking at is a plummeted price of AutoZone stock in just a matter of an hour or two, when it went up pre-market from 710 and fell later in the day all the way to 596. Why should you care? By utilizing a very simple option strategy, we were able to turn every $1,000 of investment from 9:30 in the morning till 10:45 a.m. into an excess of $10,000. That's right, literally a $10,000 investment produced in excess of $100,000 in gains. The crazy truth about stocks and options trading: most of the fortunes were created when stocks fall. So if you're not utilizing this crazy strategy, you're definitely missing out on thousands of dollars, and you're leaving that money on the table for somebody else. Look, these are the facts. Just think about it. Stocks drop actually much, much faster than it takes them to climb higher. So just take a look. There's your AZO graph right here. It took it a month, 2 months to get from this 580 level all the way to about 700. And look how fast it dropped just in one day. Now, how do we know that this had a potential to happen? Look, it has a history of doing these things at the same level at around 700. It did it last time during the earnings report. So you don't have to be a rocket science. You just got to know which stocks, when to take action, and you got to know how to find the stocks. Has it ever occurred to you that every day when the market goes higher, there's plenty of stocks that actually drop? Because if every day some stocks did not drop, then the market would go to the moon, just like Bitcoin, right? The reality of life, everything that goes up must come down. Look at the housing bubble in 2008. Bitcoin prices, when nobody believed, we put a recommendation at 18,800 to short Bitcoin. In other words, to make money when it falls. The bottom line is this: you don't need a market crash for you to actually profit on stocks falling. The opportunities are there every single day. You just got to know where to look for. If you grasp the simple idea that stocks fall much faster than they go up, you will be able to become a much more effective and efficient stock or options trader. Okay, hold on. So what you're saying is, while everybody's chasing the stocks on the way higher, the real money is actually made when stocks drop. Yes, that's exactly what I'm saying. If you'd like to learn more about this fascinating and yet such a simple strategy, I invite you to go behind the scenes with me, where I will reveal to you how I turned 12,000 into 466,000 in less than 7 hours trading options with this strategy. And I know this sounds crazy, but I actually did it. And I want to share with you all the specifics, all the details of how I was able to accomplish that. So if you'd like to become a better trader, take action now. Click the link on the button below. Life is too short. Don't waste another minute. Today is your day.